boys and girls, Brucie here, and I had a question from a viewer called Mr. Green who was on one of my Hans Zimmer masterclass videos. If you haven't seen those are a kind of review of the Hans Zimmer masterclass and a little bit of a rant about what I thought a lot of the criticisms were about and what people didn't really get about what a masterclass should be, what a masterclass is and what it isn't. But that's an aside. Go check the videos out if you want to know more. Mr. Green's question was, what tools do you need beside a computer and the internet to get started composing for film, and I guess composing for medium and just generally composing? So I thought I would do a video here of the things you really need for composing, and you'll be surprised that actually it's not a lot. So if we start with the first thing, I know Mr. Green said aside from a computer, but in this day and age a computer probably is the most important thing you need and will be, when you're starting out, the biggest outlay. Now, I'm not going to get into discussions about Mac and PC. There are arguments for both, but as you can probably see here, I am a Mac user and I will explain the reasons why. I am a Mac user because I have been using Logic and Digital Performer for many, many years. If you trace my DAW history backwards, I started off with Logic before it was even called Logic, moved over to Cubase for a while, ended up selling Cubase for a while back in the halcyon days of the 90s, then had a brief flirtation with Digital Performer, which it still goes on and off. I do like Digital Performer, it has a number of great features, and of course Pro Tools. I have Pro Tools because Pro Tools is good for certain things. But what's really, really crucial is these are all just tools. You know, there are so many great pieces of software out there that it is so easy to get lost in this minefield. The most important thing about composing, about writing, about doing anything creative is finishing the project. And when you finish a project, 99 times out of 100, your client really doesn't care what it was written in. It's a bit like, you know, you go and read a book. Do you really care if it was written in Word or Notepad or Pages or WordPress or whatever? Any of these, we don't care. You just like the end product. So don't get too fixated on that. Having said that, let me explain some of my choices to you that might be useful. If you want to compose from film, you're at some point going to need a lot of sound sources, sample libraries potentially at some point in the future if you haven't got access to orchestras, if that is your thing, and I'll get to that in a minute. The reason that Logic would be a logical choice is that it just comes with the most bundled amount of loops, sample libraries, synths, everything to get you going. Take that for what it is, but it, you know, if you are just starting out, for the asking price that Logic is, you know, there's nothing that competes on that price. And again, I'm not sponsored by Apple, I'm not sponsored by Logic. Logic can be a little bit infuriating at times, but just for bang for buck, starting in composing, then I think you're going to be hard pressed with the things that it offers. There is an alternative, of course. If you choose to go with another DAW, you could look at, you know, buying your DAW and then something like Native Instruments Complete. Again, that will give you, no pun intended, again, wow, this is puntastic today, a complete range of tools from amazing sample libraries, a number of synths like Absynth, FM7, Reactor, Massive. You get all these synths bundled with it. You get Guitar Rig. So it is a kind of complete productions tool, which you will then need a DAW to go alongside it. And that DAW, of course, could be anything. So there's two different approaches there as to what you might need. But if I was recommending something to my students on a limited budget, I would say if you're a Mac user, then, you know, jump in and maybe go with Logic, see if you like it. But again, remember, you're getting all these great tools. Pro Tools, that word comes up. I have Pro Tools on this system because I also do a lot of mixing and I do a lot of guitar recording. That's the other thing that I do a lot of because it's the guitar recording factory. Pro Tools has this evil word banded about it, industry standard. Now we have to kind of take that with a little bit of a pinch of salt. It is the industry standard for certain things, and it excels at doing certain things. Now, in my opinion, and this is someone who teaches both Logic and Pro Tools, Logic is great for composing, and it's that the mindset for me is how a composer works, and it's kind of geared up for that mindset. Pro Tools is very much geared up for mixing, I feel, for post-production audio, for audio editing. It really, really excels at that. And that doesn't mean you can't do those things in Logic or any other DAW. You can. It's just the way that they work. And what I'm getting here is, if possible, you know, try a few out. There's various ones that come as free downloads. I would certainly recommend having a go with Reaper because it's free for 30 days and then it has this kind of little bit of a license where you can keep evaluating it for a little bit longer before they actually ask you to pay, and it's really relatively inexpensive. So if you are starting out and on a budget, you know, you might want to jump in and use Reaper. Remember, these are all basically tools. Finding a tool that works, that they all work and they will all do the job. Some might do it a little bit easier than others, some might do other things a little bit easier than others, but at the end of the day, don't get too fixated on it until you get further down the track and you've got more money to maybe invest in a system. All of these skills, so these are skills, not functions, are transferable. So if you learn how to edit audio in Pro Tools or Reaper or Logic, the principle, the skill, the idea behind editing audio doesn't change. All that changes is perhaps which keys and the way that something might be on a menu. It's just things are in slightly different places. Just like if you're learning to write and craft words and craft sentences and put paragraphs in, doesn't matter what word processor you're in, but you know, the bit to put something in bold might be in a completely different place. That's all. You can still make it bold, and some might have it hidden away and it's just like, oh, it's such a nightmare to find it. It's so illogical. But whatever you do, whatever you choose, the thing is to stick with it for a while and really try and break it, try and push it to its limits. Don't get fed up, because ultimately the thing you're trying to do is create music. That's the goal. And if you're working for film, you're working with a director, you're working with a production team, all they're interested in is what you produce, not how you produce it. You know, you're giving a brief, stick to the brief and do that. So number one, computer and DAW, that's the software. Now you're going to notice a kind of theme that runs through this video, and that theme is that I don't like my students to go out and have to think that they have to spend a lot, because in 2019 when I'm doing this video, there is so much amazing free stuff out there on the internet. It's kind of astounding that actually if you picked up something like Reaper with all its amazing plugins that it has with inside, search around, there are a whole host of companies that offer free versions of their plugins or free bundles. I have put a few in the list below which you might want to go and check out straight away. There is, you know, compressors, multi-band compressors, reverbs, there's free ones out there, and some of them that sound great. I was just using the Blue Cat Audio guitar amp model the other day, which was free, and it's for a free thing, it's fantastic, and it will get the job done, which again is all we're trying to do here, because there's no point being online talking about all the things that you want to have and the things that you can have. At the end of the day, for whatever you're doing, particularly when you're starting out, you've just got to get the job down. It's all about your track record, not what gear you have. Having said that, there is no excuse not to go over to Spitfire and download their labs. If you are starting out, you don't have any sample libraries and you can't afford any sample libraries, you don't have many sound sources, then this is without question of a doubt one of the best things I've ever heard. And again, not sponsored by Spitfire, they're no interest in me, they don't even know who I am, but I'm always telling students, and when students hear it, particularly the free drum kit, it's like, wow, this is a great sample library. Link in the box below. Do head over there and check out the labs, because wow, they are simply fantastic. I tend to use them on all my projects now. And what's great about labs is, and it brings me on to something else, is that it inspires my mindset, and the way that my mind works is that, yeah, I'm really fortunate. I've got Native Instruments Complete. I have a whole bunch of actual paid for Spitfire, like the Albions, VSL Ensemble, and all these great libraries. But actually, you may have seen a lot of some of my other videos where I'm always fighting this idea of option paralysis. And what Spitfire Labs has inspired me to do, so not only is it a great sounding, but it's actually to just get back to how I used to do and produce my own sounds. That's what makes me unique as a composer. That's what makes us stand out. So don't worry about what everyone else is using. Try and get out there and make your own sounds. Having a sampler is kind of quite important part of this process. Now again, if you've got Logic, you've got EXX24 built in, so you don't have to buy it. There are a couple of free ones floating around, but Contact is probably, you know, the daddy of them all, and something that you may have to buy at some time. If you're using something like Ableton, there's Simpler in there. You could of course just place samples on your timeline. That's another way, old school way of doing it, but maybe getting a sampler would be a good idea. So again, maybe a shout out for Logic there, in that as part of that price you're getting a sampler and a whole bunch of sample libraries. Because again, if you're ignoring some of this advice and going, I'm just going to go and buy a whole bunch of sample libraries, then most of them use either Contact as a host or Contact Player. So you will maybe have to fork out for something at some point. But what the point I'm kind of getting with is all about creating your own sounds, which kind of brings me on to hardware. What hardware do you need? Well, I would advocate always, first and foremost, something like this. This is a Tascam field recorder. I have a whole bunch. I've got the Zoom field recorders, which I love, and the reason I'm not showing now because mine's in a really bad state because I've just used it to death. This is always in my bag. I'm always out there capturing unique and interesting sounds and turning them into my own miniature sample libraries. Now there is a plug for me now, and another company that I run alongside the Guitar Recording Factory and my Spencer Bruce Music is with an old student of mine. We have a company called Manipulated Acoustics, and we produce sample packs currently for Omnisphere and coming soon for Contact. Little plug there, but what I'm saying is, you know, me and Rob, my co-founder, we just love going out there and recording stuff, and abstract or not abstract, I've recorded a whole bunch of guitars, processing them, and that just creates unique and interesting textures and sounds, which is very key for film composition. Using something then like Audacity, which is free. Again, I'm really pushing these free things. A free audio editor with a great bunch of built-in effects that you can use quick and easily to process your samples. You'll be creating unique and interesting textures. You know, and this is something that Hans Zimmer is doing a lot of now. So join the party. Don't worry at this point about recording big string orchestras and blah blah. Just start making small. Start small. Keep it simple. Make your own interesting sound. And if you know, you can't afford one of these right now, maybe you've got one of these, you know, a smartphone. This has a recorder on it. It's not the best recorder in the world because the microphone's not the best in the world. Some, like an iPhone, allow you to plug in an external microphone. That's great. Just use this. Just capture sound, because that's what we're trying to do at the end of the day. We're trying to capture and process sound. Make your own little sample libraries up. Tweak them, make them playable, make textures, and you will go a long way from that. That leads me on to the next thing. At some point, you know, if you've got a recorder, then you'll probably want some form of microphone to capture recordings, maybe to capture session players who come in and do a bit of work, because that's another really important thing when you're starting out. Is it's so easy to get carried away with doing all this yourself. And I always urge collaborations. You know, go to a local school. If you're doing an orchestral piece and you've made a mock-up with your sample library, go to a school or go to a music college. Find someone who plays the violin just to play maybe a couple of versions of the top line over your track, and it instantly gives it a much better human, less computerized feel. So these things you don't have to buy. These things are within your grasp as you're starting out, and I'd encourage you from the beginning to kind of do these things. Instruments are great. Even if you can't play, just get instruments, a ukulele or whatever you can find in a junk shop or in a second-hand shop. You know, even if you find an old beaten up acoustic guitar, you know, ask around your family, because there tends to be, and again, as a guitar teacher, and I find this, that there's always a guitar in a loft somewhere. Someone in your family will have a guitar in a loft. Doesn't matter if you can't play it. You can play along one string. You can play notes along one string. Again, sample them, or maybe not. Maybe make that part of the composition. It's free, potentially, or it's very, very cheap to do that. Alongside that, again, we're talking cheap here, things to create your own sounds. Don't worry about all these expensive synths. Get a broken up guitar. Go on eBay. Go to your local charity shop, maybe Gumtree, Craigslist. Buy guitar pedals. Guitar pedals can be, particularly distortion, ultra cheap. It doesn't matter if they make nasty sounds. That's all part of it. Plug your acoustic guitar through a microphone into a guitar pedal. See what you come up with. You might find something that's inspiring and interesting. These are really, really great little tools that you can have at your disposal when you're starting out. And as you carry on, you'll do this. These things will stay with you forever as you're building and creating your own sound. The other thing is just junk, things you can hit, things you can shake. You know, silly thing. Shaker's really annoying, but what can you do with this? What can you put it inside a water bottle? Can you sound design with it? These are all really, really useful little tools that you can easily and cheaply have at your disposal. So to me, that's the kind of foundation of what you need. But I've saved the best for last, and this is probably, without doubt, the most important thing, and that is a big collection of music. Spotify is great for this, or your own CD collection, because if you want to be a composer, the best tool you can have is your ears and your mind and your inspiration. All of this other stuff as you're starting out really doesn't matter if you haven't got the ideas, because it's so easy, and I've seen people do this, I've seen students do it, and I've kind of done it a little bit myself, is you think that buying the next synth, buying the next thing is going to make you a better composer. It really won't. Listening to a piece of music, absorbing it, critically listening, and I'm going to do a video on critical listening at some point because I'm aware this one's going on a little bit. Critical listening is the key skill here. Listen to ideas, listen to chord progressions, and even if you can't hear them, try and figure them out. You will gain so much more from building your ear up and listening and being inspired and being intrigued by other music, and not just music, books, poems, artwork. If it's creating images in your head, and you're wanting to be a film composer, then you know your job is to take, or our job is to take sounds and put them to pictures, make those pictures come alive. That's the job. So having these little ideas, or you know, someone presents you with a scene and being able to hear what the music is in your head is the greatest thing you need, and it's the greatest tool you can get. So build your music collection. And again, in this day and age, we've got YouTube, we've got Spotify. There's no excuse. Just listen. Devote the amount of time you might spend on online forums like VI Forum or VI Control or whatever, looking around and seeing all these people arguing about what's better. Forget all that. Spend that time listening to music, and you will become an infinitely better composer. So to sum up, you need a really good computer, because it will take up a lot of resources, but we've said that you've got a good computer. DAW, try a Reaper, it's free. Try Logic. You know, well, it's difficult to try Logic. Try and find ones that have a free demo download. But if you're going to commit, if you're on the Apple Mac, you can't really go along with Logic. It's a great starting DAW. In terms of what you get to come with some of the others, check around. Digital Performer now comes with a whole bunch of sample libraries. I think Cubase does, Ableton does as well. Not the same amount that Logic does, but they're all good starting places. Download Spitfire Labs, whatever you do, it's something that you will use, and it will something that will start you off and get you inspired. Go out with your mobile phone, cell phone, whatever you call it, wherever you are in the world, I'm not quite sure. Record sounds, get Audacity, it's free, download them, manipulate the sounds, play around with them, edit them, chop them up, create interesting things. Maybe invest in a sampler if you can, if you haven't got one already in your DAW that you decide that you're going to go with. Get a few bits of junk instruments, junk sounds, make interesting textures, interesting melodic lines, which make people jump out of their skins when they hear them. Not in terms of, but it's like, wow, that's a great sound. It's just patch 57 on this library XYZ. That's not really inspiring. That's not really interesting. It might be you need that to do that at some point, but just build your own library of sounds that you can fall back on, and it will set you aside from everyone else who's using all the same libraries that everyone else is doing. Network with musicians, get in there and record musicians. So microphone could be important, or in the interim, you know, something like a field recorder, which will double as a microphone as you're getting started, could be quite useful. And then, as I said, just listen. That's the tool. That's something that I advise you do from the outset. Just start listening. Go away now and start listening to some music and be inspired by it. There you go, Mr. Green. I hope you found that useful. If you have any further questions, please do drop me a line in the comments below. I've been Brucie, and I will catch you later.